Hi, I'm Kat Kalashian for Live and Invest Overseas, and today I want to talk a little bit about the Camino de Santiago. Have you heard of it before? It's a pilgrimage route that leads to Spain's famous town dedicated to St. James, Santiago de Compostela, which is why it's called the Camino, the trail, the pathway to Compostela. Or of Compostela. And it is high up on my bucket list. I cannot wait. I'm actually planning to do this in a few years. And I plan to do from Paris, essentially, on foot and also on horseback, I'm hoping, and possibly a bit on bike, and to even include my kids in the first few days of it, perhaps. So really, really fun thing. And there are lots and lots of different paths through Europe that have led to Santiago de Compostela. It's been a vital part of Europe's cultural and spiritual identity for hundreds of years. It's shaped centuries of religious devotion, cultural exchange, and economic growth along the pathway. Kings and commoners have walked this trail many times, at least for the last bit. At least going up the stairs to the cathedral, you're supposed to go on your knees, and some people even go even further on their knees. Some people start at the city gates. When they enter the city, they enter on their knees. So it is a humbling experience, no matter who you are. And of course, the route used to be a lot more dangerous. Back in the day, you had to contend with illnesses, fevers, thieves, marauders. Today, of course, people walk the Camino. It's much safer. It's much more of an enjoyable experience. Many people do it for many different reasons. So some of them, like me, are just out for a really interesting historical hike, which should take a couple of months, hopefully. And of course, you can do just a little bit of it if you don't want to do the entire thing. So people do this now for religious reasons, yes, but also for personal reasons. Whether it's just pushing your physical limits, training yourself for a big endeavor like this. And sometimes this is the intention. Sometimes it's the unexpected bonus at the end. But most people, anybody that I've ever talked to, or if you've seen the movie with Martin Sheen, it is a pilgrimage of self-discovery now for many people. So here's a quick history of it. Let's just get to the bottom of it really quickly. So according to legend, the Apostle James was preaching in Iberia, went to Jerusalem, was executed there, but his followers brought his remains to what is now Spain, Galicia, and they were buried and then forgotten. Nobody knew where they were for many hundreds of years after that. Then in the 9th century, a hermit followed a bunch of stars in the sky, discovered the site where he was buried, leading to it then being excavated, and eventually they uncovered the tomb that everyone now believes belonged to St. James. Over time, the Camino de Santiago became this very significant religious and cultural route. The cities along the Camino became hubs. They had all of this economic prosperity brought in from people coming and going. And they were also a meeting point and a melting pot of so many different cultures and languages, people crossing paths and exchanging ideas that wouldn't have otherwise. So you can imagine how there's a lot that can come from all these different people from all over the world joining each other on this trail, which still happens today, by the way. Again, check out that movie. It's called The Way, I believe, with Martin Sheen. So little trivia tidbit here. Many say that the world's first travel guide is a 12th century codex, the Codex Calixtinus, which was authored by someone now anonymous. But it's an anthology that includes practical advice for pilgrims, along with some history and canonical stuff about St. James. But it basically included all of this practical advice for pilgrims walking the route, as well as artworks you could see on the way, insights into local customs along the way. And today it is thought to be the first known travel guide. So interesting that the Camino put travel in the mainstream. It regularized a certain amount of travel, even if it happened to be by foot. So of course, the goal of walking the Camino as a pilgrimage was to gain absolvance from all sins. So for full forgiveness of sins, there is a requirement. A pilgrim must walk at least 100 kilometers on foot or horseback, or at least 200 kilometers by bicycle. A little bit of a modern version there. And this is all documented. The whole trip that you take is documented through your pilgrim's passport, which is called the Credencial del Peregrino. And it gets stamped at the albergues, the pilgrim hostels along the way. Churches, other little checkpoints will give you stamps as well. And as I said, there are several places to start the route. Many start in France, a few start in Spain, and a few also start in Portugal. And that's the one I want to talk about today. So if you were to walk the Camino, you would notice several things, and I have to educate yourself in how to recognize these symbols of the Camino. So the first, the biggest, most important is the scallop shell. This identifies pilgrims or places made for pilgrims or catering to pilgrims, and it symbolizes the journey. What's interesting about this, my art historian background creeping back up on me, the scallop shell is really important in religious symbolism, especially when it comes to St. James, but as well as this pilgrimage for many pilgrimages, because the scallop shell is the most useful tool one could possibly have. If you could have one thing in your back pocket, a scallop shell would be a pretty good thing to have. You can use it as a spoon to eat. You can use it as a cup for water, from a fountain or a bucket. You can also use it as a knife. It's got a little serrated edge, so you can use it to saw some bread or meat or cheese off of a hunk. So scallop shell was the symbol of pilgrims throughout the ages. So if you ever see a painting, you see some scallop shells in it, you know what that is referring to now. Yellow arrows are a more modern one. These were introduced in the late 20th century, and they guide pilgrims along the way. Your passport, the credencial, is another big symbol, and it also provides you access to lodgings and other discounts along the road. The cross of Santiago is a red cross with a fleur-de-lis arms on it, and it's the symbol of the religious order of Santiago, which you'll see along the way as well. And you'll see lots of just little wayside crosses and chapels along the way. These were just intended to provide spiritual protection along the route and a little bit of amnesty, a little place of refuge. So if you are in Portugal, I was actually surprised to learn when I was writing my book, I was surprised to learn that there are several routes actually that lead from Portugal. And so these all travel north, as Santiago de Compostela is right up in the northern corner of Spain, the northwestern corner of Spain, essentially right above Portugal. So when choosing a route, you'll need to consider a few things. How much time you have is number one. So how long do you want to spend on the route? Also, your fitness level will have a certain impact on what things you may or may not be able to do. But honestly, you will meet people from all different age groups and with various fitness levels along the Camino. So it's not like you need to be fit to hike Kilimanjaro or Everest or something. This is a pretty flat hike for the most part. So there are three main routes on the Portuguese Camino, and I'm going to talk about first the central route. It's the most established route in Portugal. It's the second most popular. I was shocked to learn it is the second most popular way after the French way, which typically starts just south of Paris. It officially begins in Lisbon, but many pilgrims actually choose to start in Porto instead. And so it's an inland route, as the name implies, the central route, offering a mix of historical towns, charming villages, vineyards, woodlands, rivers, medieval bridges, sections of Roman road, just gorgeous sights to see along the way, and so much to learn and appreciate as you go through. Urban highlights on the Portuguese side include Barcelos, which is a very famous little town known for its architecture and ceramics. The history of the rooster, which I do talk about in my book, originated in Barcelos, and Ponte de Lima, with its picturesque riverside and surrounding mountain views, and Valença do Minho, which is home to a fortress that overlooks Spain, in fact. So when it comes to taking the Camino, the rest days are just as important as your active days. In order to keep up your motivation as well as your strength, rest days are really essential, and they should be planned into your route. You shouldn't take them spontaneously, because you might end up wanting to take a break in the middle of a field of cows, and then where will you be? You'll be stuck with cows overnight. So two of the best places to take a break on this route specifically are in Ponte de Lima and in Valença do Minho, which is often just referred to as Valença. Ponte de Lima is the oldest Portuguese town, in fact. It's an ideal place to stop and recharge before tackling the climb of the Serra da la Bruja. As I said, most of these routes, for the most part, are pretty flat and easy for any fitness level, but there are going to be on certain routes, especially some little uphill climbs. So this is one of those. But before you get there, stop in Ponte de Lima, stroll over the town's medieval bridge, which stretches over the Lima. Ponte is bridge, so the bridge of the Lima makes sense. And there's a funny legend here. So near the bridge, you'll see these mock Roman troops, and these reference this kind of funny old legend in which Roman soldiers came to Ponte de Lima, or they came to the area before it was known as that, and they mistook the Lima River for the mythical Lethe. This is the river of forgetfulness in Greek and Roman mythology. And so if you drink from it, you will forget everything that you've ever known in your life. So fearing that they would all lose all of their memories of their homes and their families if they crossed this river, they hesitated. The consul did cross the river alone, and once he was on the other bank, he called out their names one by one, proving that he still had his memory. He was proving that they could all come over safely. So bit of a funny little thing to memorialize there. But then a stop at the Largo de Camões is another good option. It's the central plaza, and it's really a must for sipping a nice cool drink, enjoying a local snack, and watching the world go by as you recharge for the next leg. There's some fun sights to see here: the Gothic Matrice Church and the 14th century prison tower. There's also a late 17th century fountain that's very beautiful. If you like museums, there's a toy museum. If you're here with kids, they might like that. Also a military museum, a Vinho Verde museum. So if you're into wine, check that one out. And also a Franciscan museum of religious artwork. So if you are leaning into the religious side of the route, you might find that one as a must-do as well. And then in Valença do Minho, which is just before the crossing into Spain, this is another great rest stop. It's up on a hilltop, so it offers breathtaking views, and it sits inside of a 13th century fortress. Within these fortress walls, get lost in the maze of narrow cobbled streets, which are lined with historical traditional houses. You'll see lots of handicrafts and linen shops here, and of course, requisite churches and lots of cafes and restaurants to get up your strength. So the flavors along this route, definitely in this region, the local cornbread is the number one thing you've got to try. This is called the Broa de Milho, the sparkling fresh Vinho Verde, of course. A piping hot bowl of Caldo Verde, which is kind of like the chicken soup of Portugal. It's not chicken soup at all. I'm just saying it equates to that in the sense of comfort and healing properties. So it is basically a soup with lots of finely shredded cabbage and slices of smoked sausage. So when you're sick in Portugal, ask for the Caldo Verde. And that means green soup, and it's called green because of all that cabbage in there. Any of the cod, bacalhau dishes are a must. And the not for the faint of heart, arroz de sarabulo. This rice dish features pork, meat, and blood, cumin, nutmeg, cloves, so you can start to imagine what a rich palate this would be creating. So not for the faint of heart, and definitely something that you might want to share amongst friends, maybe not commit to eating all yourself, but something that you should definitely try if you're in the area. Minho is also famous when it comes to desserts for its leche creme, which is kind of like a version of creme brulee. It's infused with lemon and cinnamon, though, so it's got a sharper, more local to Portugal flavors with that citrus and cinnamon in it. The cinnamon, of course, coming from the age of discovery, all of those sailors coming back with these spices from overseas, whereas the French version doesn't have as many of those nuances in it. So there's still the coastal and inland routes that I'd like to tell you about, but before we get to those, I do want to just mention again my new book. It just came out. I'm very proud. It's been a labor of love that has been so much fun to put together with all of my friends and contacts in Portugal. It's the culmination of spending 15 plus years in this country, getting to know the country, the culture, the food, and lots of locals and expats there. So it is called Living in Portugal, Your Guide to the Good Life in the Old World. Collection of nearly 200 little insights, anecdotes, fun, secret trivia things, places nobody else knows about. These are the things that are revealed only by spending lots of time or speaking with locals or expats who've been there a long time. It's your chance basically to slip behind the curtain and get this insider view right off the bat as soon as you land. And it gives you this insight into a fascinating side of the country that most will never even get to know. So I am giving away a few hundred free copies in celebration of the publication. If you'd like to try and get your hands on one of those free copies, you can click that link on the screen. All right, so without further ado, let's talk about the coastal route. So this one is probably the most enticing. It's the route that you want to take because it has these beautiful seaside views. It's a great alternative. It also starts in Porto. It follows part of Portugal's Atlantic coastline, passing through a bunch of little seaside towns before you cross into Spain and merge with the central route. So this is just kind of an extra little different leg to get onto the main route. Here, hikers or pilgrims will be treated to gorgeous ocean views, sandy beaches, fresh seafood, The trails wind through boardwalks and fishing villages and historic paths. So this is a really, really great way to experience a different side of Portugal's coastline, which usually just focuses kind of on the beaches and the pretty cliffs, and it's all gorgeous, but there's another layer behind this section of these towns. It is slightly longer and it's exposed to coastal winds, so keep that in mind. It will be a little colder than the central way. It'll also be less crowded though, so weigh the pros and cons. The best cities for rest days on this route, it doesn't have as many steep climbs as the central route, so you may need fewer rest days here. On the other hand, it has fewer shaded areas because you're exposed on the coast, and there is that possibility of those cold northern winds coming in. So choosing the right cities for rest days can be important here, although you have many more options. But I would recommend Viana do Castelo or Campina. They're two perfectly placed stops along the way. So Viana do Castelo is at the mouth of the Lima River, which I mentioned previously. It's called the Princess of the Minho. It's a very treasured town in Portuguese history. It's Praça da República, which is its kind of main plaza, is definitely worth a visit. It's got this gorgeous 16th century fountain, the town hall, and a hospital, which was done in the Mannerist style, which isn't actually very common in Portugal at all. So interesting little rare architectural gem there. It is very famous though for its golden filigree jewelry. This is kind of where this craft, this artwork, where it originated. It's also got traditional costumes in these really vibrant colors, which are showcased in the costume museum if you care to take a look. There's also a decorative arts museum, which is the place to go if you want to learn more about all of those beautiful tiles that you'll see all throughout Portugal, the azulejos. And there's the Gil Inês hospital ship, which was originally a Portuguese Navy vessel and then converted into a floating hospital. And it would be a tourist crime to not visit the Santa Lucia Basilica, which is up on a hill with gorgeous views all around in the surrounding area. Around mid-August, beware, thousands of visitors come for the festival of Nossa Senhora da Agonia, Our Lady of Agony, the patron saint of fishermen in Viana, who's also celebrated throughout Galicia. It was started in 1772 and it lasts for several days. The town gets very, very crowded, so you might not want to come during those days. If you don't, keep that in mind. If you do, great time to go. Camina is the other town I recommend. This is Portugal's northernmost town, literally across the river from Spain. Like, if you could throw a stone that far, you could throw a stone into another country. The older part of Camina is still surrounded by its original medieval walls. It's a great place to relax on the central square with the lovely fountain and lively cafes. You should definitely enjoy the 15th century church, the Igreja da Misericórdia, with Baroque and Rococo interior. So very fanciful, very over-the-top decoration inside of this church. The 12th century clock tower is an icon for the town as well, so you're sure to see it from ground level. If you'd like to climb up for its views as well, then that's another good option. We're still in the same region when we're talking about these two different routes, so many of the dishes from the previous section also apply here. The cornbread, the bacalhau, etc. But because this route is on the coast, the fresh fish and the seafood dishes do play more of a prominent role. They're more of a staple here, especially octopus. So if you're into octopus, definitely a good place to get this. You should definitely try the famous soup from Viana. It's a fish soup called chorina. It's got tomatoes, peppers, and fresh coriander, which is cilantro in American English. And it is the most northern fish dish in the country. So again, something I talk about in my book, give you a little bit more history about that. Finally, there's the interior route, which stretches from Viseu to Chaves and connects with a variant of the Spanish Via de la Plata. It meanders through rural trails, eco-ways, paved roads, streams and rivers, plenty of opportunities to cool off on this route. And this is the least popular route. So unlike the more popular routes, this one is very quiet. It offers a totally different experience, a much more intimate connection with nature, for example, but also with often overlooked communities. So this is a chance to get to know places that don't really see that many foreigners, period. And you'll also enjoy lots of breathtaking views, vineyards from the Alto Douro region, which could be fun along the way. A little wine hiking, never hurt anybody. The historic cities of Viseu and Chaves are also great places to be able to say you've seen. And there's just the rugged beauty of these regions. So the Alto Tamega and the Peso de Rejua are just something that most people don't experience. Here, if you're looking for rest days, again, the landscape landscapes are really the big asset of this trail. And so the Alto Douro wine region, which is a UNESCO heritage site and famous for its terraced slopes of vineyards, this is a big part of this region. So in fact, a vineyard would be a very reasonable rest stop if you wanted to do that. But another stop might be the Pedras Salgadas Thermal Park, for example. So here, we're talking a little bit more about the nature than about the towns and villages. So except for 3 winter months, this thermal park is always open, and the spring is free, open to the public. Visitors can take a swim, sip the warm, slightly ferruginous water directly from the source. And again, there is no charge for this, and it is just an open park. As you pass through villages, don't be surprised if somebody offers you a fruit or a water, glass of wine, or a bit of a friendly chat. This is, as I say, this is a part of Portugal that doesn't really see that many people from outside their village as the year goes by. So specifically though, Lamigo is worth seeing. Villarreal is another option. This is an ancient city, and the city's cathedral is the finest example of Gothic architecture in the region. So worth your time if you're into architecture or churches, religious buildings. The most iconic building is one whose facade you may recognize. If you drink much rosé wine, or you've spent a lot of time in Portugal drinking rosé wine, you might notice that the facade here is the same as that of the label of the Mateus Rosé wine label. So the Casa de Mateos Palace is the facade, is the face of a cultural and educational foundation, which was established in 1970, built in the first half of the 18th century in the Baroque style. Visitors will enjoy the gardens as well as the buildings. You can indulge in tastings of locally produced wines, olive oils, jams, and craft beers now. That's a pretty new one. Chaves is close to the Spanish border, and its most striking landmark is the Trajan Bridge. It's a Roman structure and one of Portugal's finest remnants from antiquity. So again, just something that most people are never going to see. But if you love antiquity, if you love history, if you love architecture, if you love engineering, these are the places that have some really fine examples of all of these things. It's also home to a medieval castle and the Cathedral of Santa Maria Major. And if you're into modern art, the Nadir Afonso Contemporary Art Museum should definitely be on your list. It celebrates the work of one of Portugal's most renowned artists. The city's thermal baths are also worth a visit. They have been known as well since Roman times for their healing waters. Visitors can explore the modern thermal spa or step back in time to the Museum of the Roman Baths, where the archaeological remains reveal the importance of these waters even in ancient times. Here, meat as opposed to seafood is going to take the center stage when it comes to flavors to appreciate on the route. You are inland, so the specialties are going to include goat and veal more than anything else. The veal, especially from the Maronesa breed of cow. Then hearty dishes. So, these are mountain people that go out working really hard every day. So the feijoada transmontana is a bean stew. You could kind of compare it to an American chili, a really hearty, comforting soup that's going to stick to your ribs. Smoked pork meats and traditional sausages are also local staples. You'll find trout on the menu, as well as the ever-present cod, although it is coming from a little bit further, seeing as we're inland here. The renowned savory pastries of this region are definitely worth a try, so you should definitely seek out a coviletes, the pastéis de Chaves. These are both delicious puff pastries with minced beef, and each has its own unique flavor profile. For dessert, try the cristas de gallo, the delicate half-moon shaped pastries that are filled with a rich almond and egg cream. The best times of year to do this are in the spring or in the autumn, where there are less temperature extremes and rain and fewer people. For more insights like this on Portuguese culture and how to dive deeper into true Portuguese lifestyles that most people miss, especially tourists, check out my new book, Living in Portugal, Your Guide to the Good Life in the Old World. Happy trails.